On
Effective
Tuesday, she
immediately,
laid her
Mr.
father
Chen
to
has been
rest.
removed from the board of
On
directors
Wednesday,
following
her
the
husband
discovery of
filed for
significant
divorce.
financial
By
irregularities.
To the
Friday,
future,
he was
darling.
married to another woman. He stood just a few feet away from her at the funeral,
And to us.
holding his own umbrella as she grieved.
This is strictly a business matter now.
What he failed to
The
consider,
lawyers will be in
what
touch.
never crossed his mind,
Marcus,
was that the quiet
please, you
janitor
can't do
who
this.
raised her was actually a billionaire in hiding. So when he proudly walked into a gala with his new wife on his arm, he was walking directly into the biggest mistake of his life. Before we continue, if you have ever been underestimated for being
They're
quiet,
everywhere.
let me know where you are
Birds,
watching
birds,
from in the
birds.
It's a
comments.
perfect day for the park.
We are about to see if loyalty and patience still have a place in this world, because what unfolds next will make you question everything. This story will teach you that true wealth is not what you own, but who you become when no one is watching. And sometimes the people who underestimate you are simply handing you the greatest opportunity to prove them wrong. The machines did the breathing for him because his own body no longer could. Maya rested her hand on the cold metal of the hospital bed, her knuckles turning white as she listened to the mechanical, unnatural rhythm. There was the hiss from the ventilator and the constant beep from the monitor. The overhead lights buzzed with a dull, indifferent sound. She watched her father's chest rise and fall, but it was not his own strength doing the work. "Daddy," she whispered, leaning down so close she could smell the antiseptic on his skin. "I just need you to fight for me one more time." His hand felt warm inside hers, still rough from a lifetime of work. It was a hand strong enough to hold on, but not strong enough to wake up from this. The doctors used soft words like declining and unresponsive. The language felt far too gentle for the harsh reality of the situation. Her father was dying, and no amount of careful wording could change that fact. She had been sitting in that room for 48 hours without a break. She had not slept or eaten a real meal, surviving only on coffee that tasted like regret and the ache in her back from the waiting room chair. Her husband, Marcus, had sent 2 text messages. One asked if she needed anything, the other informed her he would be late. She did not reply to either of them. Outside the hospital walls, the city was alive. Cars honked and people laughed. The world moved on, completely unaware that hers was falling apart. But inside that sterile room, time had slowed to a crawl, feeling heavy and oppressive, as if gravity itself was pressing down on her, seeing just how much she could take before she shattered. Her father had raised her all by himself. He never asked for help or complained. He just provided a steady, quiet love that was there for her every single day. When she was 7, he taught her how to tie her shoes. When she was 12, he showed her how to change a tire on a car. When she was 16, he taught her that the people who talk the loudest often have the least of value to say. And when she was 23 and told him she was getting married, he did not offer his approval immediately. He simply observed Marcus from across the dinner table, asking questions that felt a little too sharp at the time. Afterwards, he gave her a hug and said, "I trust you to know what is in your own heart." He did not say, "I trust him." He said, "I trust you." She had not grasped the difference back then, but it was becoming crystal clear now. A nurse slipped into the room, her movements quiet as she checked the monitors and made small adjustments to the tubes. She avoided looking at Maya. She had seen this scene too many times before and knew how it was going to end. Maya's phone buzzed from her pocket, but she ignored it. Then she saw her father's fingers twitch. She sat up instantly, her heart pounding in her chest. "Dad." His lips moved, but no words came out. She leaned in closer, desperate to hear anything he might say. He finally managed to speak 3 words, each one slow and strained. "Go to bank." And then the monitors began to scream. Nurses rushed into the room, gently guiding Maya into the hallway, where she could only stand and wait for them to tell her what she already knew in her heart. Her father was gone, and she had no idea what his last words meant. Growing up, Maya just assumed that every father worked two jobs. Hers certainly did. She remembered him coming home from a long day, looking tired but always having a smile ready for her. She thought every dad was an expert at fixing a leaky faucet and could tell the most amazing bedtime stories. Hers could. During the day, he was a janitor at the local elementary school, and at night he did maintenance work at the church 3 times a week. His weekends were spent helping out neighbors with repairs they could not afford. They would pay him with homemade meals, deep gratitude, and genuine respect. He never seemed exhausted or angry. He simply worked, came home, cooked dinner, and asked about her day as if it were the most important event in the world. They lived in a small, one-bedroom apartment. She had the bedroom. He slept on the couch for 16 years, and not once did he ever make her feel like it was a sacrifice. They did not have many possessions, but everything they owned was kept clean, organized, and cared for. Her father would fold his work uniforms with the same level of attention that other men gave to their expensive suits. He polished his work boots every Sunday evening. The calendar on their refrigerator had all of her school events circled in bright red ink. He never missed a single one. Other children had parents who would arrive in business attire, wearing expensive watches and driving new cars. Her father would show up in his janitor's uniform, with the faint smell of floor cleaner still on him, and he would sit in the back row to avoid embarrassing her. But she was never embarrassed, not even for a moment, because while the other parents were busy checking their phones during school recitals, her father watched her as if she was the only person in the entire room. He taught her things that seemed unusual for a janitor to know. He showed her how to read a contract and spot the hidden details. He taught her how to tell if someone was lying by watching their hands instead of their face. He explained how to walk into a room and identify who held the real power versus who was just pretending. Money talks, baby girl, he used to tell her while they washed dishes together. But character whispers, and the people who are worth your time are the ones who know how to listen for that whisper. She did not understand most of his lessons back then, but she never forgot them. When she received her acceptance letter for college, he cried. They were not tears of sadness, but tears of pure pride, the kind that made his entire face soften with joy. You are going to do things that I was never able to do, he told her. You did everything, she replied. He simply shook his head. No, I chose to do something different. There is a distinction. She did not ask him what he meant by that. Now she wishes that she had, because as she looked back, she could see all the little moments that never quite made sense. The way he spoke, the kinds of books he read, the fact that the tellers at the bank all knew him by name without needing an introduction. Her father was not just a janitor. He was a janitor for a specific reason, and she was about to discover why. It was raining on the day they buried him. It was not the gentle kind of rain that feels like sadness. It was the aggressive kind, the kind that seeps through your coat and turns the ground into thick mud. It makes you wonder if the sky itself is angry. Maya stood at the graveside, 6 months pregnant. Marcus stood next to her, holding his own umbrella. She noticed that right away, not because she was expecting a romantic gesture, but because when a strong gust of wind blew rain into her face, he did not move. He did not try to shield her. He just remained dry, looking down at his phone. One by one, people approached her to offer a hug. They said things that were meant to be comforting, but they were not. He is in a better place. At least he is no longer suffering. God needed another angel. She just nodded and thanked them. She allowed them to think their words were helping, but what she really wanted to scream was, "He is not in a better place. The better place was here with me. He should have been here to see me become a mother, to meet his grandchild, to stay." Marcus checked his watch twice during the funeral service. When the pastor invited anyone to share their memories, Marcus remained silent. Maya spoke about her father's hands, how they were never idle, always fixing something, always building, always steady when her own were shaking. Her voice cracked in the middle of her speech, and she had to stop. Marcus did not reach out to comfort her. When the casket was lowered into the ground, she stepped forward to place a rose on top. Her heels immediately sank into the wet mud. Her knees almost gave out. An older woman from church quickly grabbed her elbow, steadying her with a soft whisper. "I have got you, honey." Marcus never even noticed. Later, everyone went back to the church for food after the burial. They served sandwiches that nobody wanted, and coffee that quickly turned cold in thin paper cups. All around her, conversations buzzed, feeling way too loud for such a heavy day. Exhausted, Maya found a quiet corner and sat down, gently rubbing her belly. The baby was kicking more than usual, almost as if it could feel that something was deeply wrong. It took Marcus a full 20 minutes to find her. He did not ask, he just announced, "I need to head out for a bit." Confused, she looked up at him. "Now?" she asked. He replied, "Yes, it is that work thing I mentioned last week." She had no memory of it. Had he told her? Maybe grief had simply wiped it from her mind. It did not really matter either way. "Okay," she whispered. He gave her a quick, routine kiss on the top of her head. It felt completely empty. He promised, "I will see you tonight." But he never came home. By 10 o'clock that night, she was still sitting alone in their apartment, dressed in the same clothes she wore to the funeral, just staring at her phone. There were no texts, no calls, and no explanation. There was only silence and a sudden, cold realization washing over her. She had just buried the only man who had ever truly been there for her. Her own husband, she now realized, had checked out of their marriage long before the funeral. She just had not been ready to face that truth until this very moment. The final confirmation did not come from him, or a conversation, or even a rumor. It came from a tagged photo on Instagram. It was nearly midnight when she finally peeled herself off the couch. She managed to change out of her funeral dress, wash the day off her face, and crawl into bed. Her entire body ached with sorrow, but her mind refused to shut down. Out of sheer habit, she opened her phone and began to scroll, desperate for any distraction from the two crushing facts. Her father was gone, and her husband still was not home, and that is when she saw it. A photo of Marcus, sitting in a restaurant she knew well. It was an expensive place with dim lighting and candles on the table. He was sitting across from a woman she had never seen before. This was not a work colleague or a client. She was young and perfectly put together, the kind of pretty that takes a lot of time and money. She was leaning in close, laughing at something he had said. He was kicked back in his chair, looking relaxed and smiling in a way Maya had not seen him smile in months. The caption read, "New Beginnings," complete with emojis of clinking glasses and sparkles. It was posted just 1 hour ago. Maya stared at the picture on her phone until her eyes went out of focus. The tears did not come immediately. She just sat there, phone in hand, feeling the frantic pulse of her own heart in her throat. Her father had been laid to rest less than 12 hours ago, and here was her husband, out celebrating a new start. She tapped on the woman's profile. Isabel Chun, a marketing executive with 73,000 followers. Every single photo looked like an advertisement for a perfect life Maya knew she would never have. Maya began scrolling through Marcus's recent online activity. She saw a trail of likes on Isabel's posts that stretched back 3 whole months. There were comments that were a little too friendly, a clear pattern she had either been too trusting or just too exhausted to see before. Her hands began to tremble, not with sadness, but with something sharper, a feeling like her body was finally recognizing the betrayal her mind had been pushing away. She pushed herself up, walked into the bathroom, and gripped the edges of the sink, staring at her own reflection. Pregnant, worn out, completely alone, and married to a man who did not even have the decency to wait 1 full day after her father's funeral before taking another woman out on the town. She did not smash anything, she did not let out a scream, and she did not call him. She simply stood there, taking slow, deep breaths, feeling the baby stir inside her. After a moment, she returned to bed, placed her phone on the nightstand, and decided to wait. Marcus finally came home at 2:14 in the morning. She heard the door click open, the sound of his keys landing on the counter, and his footsteps echoing in the hall. He never even looked in on her. He went directly to the guest room. In that instant, Maya knew their marriage was over. What she did not know was just how much worse things were about to become. He waited until the morning to talk, not because he was being considerate, but because cowards prefer to do their dirty work in the light of day. Maya was in the kitchen, just looking at a cup of coffee she had no intention of drinking. When Marcus came in, he looked well rested, freshly showered, and put together, as if he had been practicing for this moment. "We need to talk," he said. She offered no reply, simply watching him, waiting for what she knew was coming. He sat down across the table from her and folded his hands neatly, as if this were some kind of business meeting. "I think we both know this is not working," he began. Her stomach plummeted, but she kept her expression perfectly still. "I have been unhappy for a while, and I believe you have been too. We just did not want to admit it." A bitter laugh almost escaped her. "We..." As if this was a decision they had reached together, as if she was the one who had been distant. "I want a divorce," he said. The words were flat and final. There was no hesitation, no hint of regret. She felt the baby give a sharp kick, as though even it could sense that something was terribly wrong. "You are serious," she stated quietly. "I am. My father died 2 days ago." "I know, I am sorry about that, but his passing does not change where we are." "Where we are?" As if their entire marriage was just a place they had stumbled into by mistake. "I will support the baby," he went on, his voice sounding like he was negotiating a contract. "Financially, I will not walk away from that responsibility. But as for you and me, we are finished. I have met someone." It was done. She stared at him, truly seeing him for the first time. This was the man she had put her trust in, the man she had chosen, the man who had promised her forever in front of everyone they cared about. And now he was sitting right there, perfectly calm, taking her life apart as if it were just a stack of paperwork. "I have already spoken with a lawyer," he added. "I will have all the documents drawn up by the end of the week. You will not have to do much. Just sign." "Just sign," she repeated, her voice hollow. "Yeah, I am trying to make this as easy as possible for you." Easy. She had the urge to scream, to hurl something at his head. She wanted to demand how he could do this to her, right now, in this way, without even pretending to feel an ounce of guilt. But she held back, because a piece of advice her father often gave her suddenly echoed in her mind. When someone shows you their true colors, believe them the first time. Marcus had just revealed exactly who he was, and she believed him. "Okay," she said. He blinked, clearly surprised. It looked like he had been bracing for a fight. "Okay, yes. If that is what you want, then okay." He stood up, looking visibly relieved. "I truly think this is the right decision for both of us." She said nothing. He turned and left the room, then the apartment, leaving her to sit there, 6 months pregnant and all alone. It was in that moment that she remembered her father's very last words to her: "Go to the bank." She grabbed her coat and walked straight out the door. If you believe that abandoning someone at their absolute lowest point is ever excusable, you need to keep listening, because what is about to happen will force you to reconsider everything you thought you knew about loyalty. The bank did not look like a typical bank. It felt more like a vault where secrets were kept safe. Maya walked across the vast lobby, past towering marble columns and chandeliers that seemed far too extravagant for a place that supposedly handled ordinary people's money. The heels of her sneakers squeaked on the mirror-like polish of the floor. She felt completely out of place, as if she was underdressed and unprepared for whatever was coming. A woman in an expensive-looking suit approached her before she could even get to the information desk. "Miss Richardson?" Maya froze. "Yes?" "We have been expecting you. Please come with me." She had not called ahead or made any kind of appointment, but somehow they were waiting for her. The woman led her past the main counter, through a heavy, secure door that needed a key card to open, and down a corridor that was unnaturally silent. They entered a private, windowless room. A man who appeared to be in his 60s, with gray hair and kind eyes, stood up as she walked in. He had a calmness about him that suggested he had seen it all before. "Miss Richardson," he said in a soft voice, "my name is Victor Kane. I was your father's account manager for 32 years. I am deeply sorry for your loss." She could only nod, a lump forming in her throat. "He told me to come here, right before he, She could not bring herself to finish the sentence. Victor gestured toward a chair. "He knew you would. He made very specific arrangements." He then placed a small metal box on the table that separated them. The numbers 1, 2, 4, 7 were etched onto its surface. "This box requires 2 keys to open," Victor explained, pulling one from inside his suit jacket. "Yours should have been with his personal belongings." Maya reached into her purse and pulled out the large envelope the hospital had given to her. Inside were her father's wedding band, his old watch, and a small brass key that had meant nothing to her until this very moment. She passed it to Victor. He slid both keys into their locks and turned them at the same time. There was a satisfying click. Victor lifted the lid of the box, then took a step back. "I will leave you to have some privacy. Please take all the time you need." He quietly exited the room and shut the door behind him. Maya just stared at the open box. On top was a stack of papers held together by a black binder clip and a sealed envelope with her name on it, written in her father's familiar script. But underneath it all was something that made her gasp. It was a collection of old photographs. One showed her father, looking to be about 25, standing proudly in front of a grand mansion, dressed in a suit that was more expensive than anything she had ever seen him in. He was surrounded by a group of people who looked like they owned the entire world. She flipped to the next item, which was a faded but still legible newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Hartwell heir vanishes after family dispute." She checked the date. It was from 34 years ago. The name printed below the headline was James Hartwell III. She looked back at the photograph. It was definitely her father, but that was not his name. Her hands began to shake as she reached for the stack of documents. The first page was a legal trust, created 28 years ago and updated just 3 weeks before her father's death. The beneficiary was listed as Maya Richardson. The trustee was Victor Kane. She quickly scanned through legal terms she barely understood. She saw phrases like irrevocable and protected interest, and something called a spousal exclusion clause. Then her eyes landed on a number at the bottom of the third page. She read it once, then read it again, and then a third time because it just could not be real. Her father, the man who had worked scrubbing floors for 35 years, had left her something that made absolutely no sense. It was not a house or a savings account. It was an empire. With trembling hands, she opened the sealed envelope. The letter inside was on plain paper. There was no logo or letterhead, just her father's neat handwriting, slanted slightly to the right, just as it always was when he was taking his time. Baby girl, if you are reading this, it means I am gone. And I am so sorry I could not be the one to tell you this myself. But some truths are just easier to accept after you have lived enough life to understand why they are so important. My name was not always James Richardson. I was born James Hartwell III, the heir to a family that cared more about its legacy than about love, and more about control than about character. My father built an empire, my grandfather made it bigger, and I was just expected to keep it going. No questions asked, no straying from the path, no choices of my own. Then, when I was 26 years old, I met your mother. She was working at a little bookstore near the university. She always wore her hair in a single braid and would read poetry on her lunch breaks. She made me laugh in a way I never knew I needed. She did not care about my family name, and she certainly did not care about the money. She cared about the person I was when nobody else was around. I wanted to marry her. My family refused. It was not because she was not good enough for them, but because she was not part of their master plan. They wanted strategic alliances, mergers, business arrangements that would look good in the financial papers. So, they presented me with a choice: the family fortune or the future I actually wanted. I chose her, and they made certain I would pay for that decision. Maya had to stop reading to wipe the tears from her eyes before she continued. They cut me off completely, disowned me in public, and wiped my name from every family record as if I had never even existed. I changed my name and found jobs that did not ask for references or connections. I started my life over with nothing but the woman I loved and the core belief that a good life does not come from money. It comes from having meaning. Your mother and I had 6 wonderful years together before she passed away while bringing you into this world. And I promise you, those 6 years were the richest of my entire life. But here's the part that my family never knew, the part I took care of before I walked away from them for good. I did not just abandon the fortune. I completely restructured it. I hid it away inside of such complex legal protections that even their army of lawyers could not touch it. I handed over control to someone I trusted with my life, and then I waited. I did not do it because I wanted revenge, but because I had a feeling that one day you would need it. The money grew, quietly and strategically, managed by people who understood that true wealth is not about what you can spend. It is about security. It is about having options. This gives you the power to shield yourself from the people I escaped. The kind of people who only see your worth when they believe you are useful to them. I wanted you to grow up free from that world. I needed you to discover yourself before you discovered what you possessed, to fall in love for genuine reasons, to forge your character when nobody was looking. And now that you have the truth, there is something else you must grasp. This is not about changing who you are. It is about giving you the means to remain exactly yourself, without compromise, without being afraid, and without asking for anyone's approval. Maya put the letter down. Her father was not running from his fortune. He was shielding her from it until the very moment she would need it the most. The other documents explained everything in language that felt both cold and precise. An irrevocable trust agreement. It was created 6 months after her father adopted his new name. The trust was updated every 5 years. Its last revision was 3 weeks before he passed away, right after receiving the diagnosis that his time was short. Maya read through the document with care, making herself absorb the meaning. This trust was not simply cash waiting in a bank account. It was a fortress, carefully constructed with legal terms and a long-term vision. Every single asset was held within legal entities, making them unreachable by lawsuits, divorce claims, or debt collectors. Her name appeared on no public documents. There were no tax records or property deeds, nothing that could ever be traced back to her. Victor Kane, the man who presented her with the box, was named as the trustee. He had complete power to manage, invest, and safeguard it all. But he was forbidden from spending a single cent without her written permission after her 25th birthday. She had turned 25 just 3 months earlier. One particular section gave her pause. It was a spousal exclusion clause. She read it a second time, trying to decipher the legal phrasing, and then it clicked. If she ever married, her husband would have absolutely no claim to her assets. The fortune was hers, and hers alone, completely untouchable for all time. This was not a punishment or a sign of mistrust in a future husband. It was the highest form of protection. Her father had witnessed too many wealthy families destroyed by bitter divorces. He had constructed a barrier around her future that no one could ever get through. Not a gold digger, not a slick con man, and not even a well-meaning husband in a marriage that just happened to fail. A husband had no claim at all, not on the initial capital, not on the income it generated, not on any part of it. The trust belonged only to her, designed to be safe from anyone who might try to get to it through her. Her father had intentionally written it this way because he anticipated, not Marcus specifically, but the eventual arrival of someone just like him, a man who would appear with a charming smile and empty promises, only to vanish when life became challenging. The trust was set up to provide her with money whenever she needed it. But once she received those funds, they became her sole property, legally separate under the state's laws. Marcus could never get his hands on them, not during a divorce, not at any point. Her father had foreseen this, maybe not the exact details, but he recognized the pattern, and he had dedicated 30 years to ensuring no one could ever hurt her the way his own family had tried to hurt him. The document included other safeguards as well. There were clauses concerning her future children, protections if she ever became unable to make decisions for herself, and guidance on how the fortune should be used, should she decide to use it. A specific phrase was repeated time and again throughout the legal papers. The beneficiary maintains sole and absolute discretion. In simple terms, it was all hers to do with as she pleased. No one could dictate how she spent it, invested it, or gave it away, and no one ever had to know it even existed. Her mind turned to Marcus, to the divorce papers he said would be ready by the end of the week, and how he presented it all as if he were doing her a kindness. He was completely clueless. He had no idea who her father truly was. He had no idea what she had just come into. He had no idea that the woman he was abandoning now held more influence in a single afternoon than he would ever gather in his whole life. The issue was not if she had the means to retaliate. The issue was if she even wanted to. Her father's advice echoed in her thoughts. True power is understanding that you do not have to wield it. But she was not entirely convinced. Power does not make a grand entrance. It is patient, and so she would be patient too. She picked up the letter once more. 2 more pages were left. Now that you know what you possess, I need you to know something far more important. Who you are. This money is not your identity. It never will be. You were built from other things, from principles, from sacrifice, from seeing what occurs when a person puts love before their inheritance. I did not raise you with nothing to punish you. I raised you with simplicity to educate you. You understand what it is to earn something, to be patient, to live without, to make decisions based on what truly counts instead of what is convenient. Most people born with money never learn that lesson. They mistake their resources for their character. They believe money gives them strength when all it really does is make them loud. You are not like them. You know that strength is not about what you possess. It is about what you do when you possess nothing at all. And now that you possess everything, I need you to hold on to that lesson, because this is what will happen. People will discover the truth in time. Not immediately, but one day they will. And on that day, you will see their true colors. The people who were with you when you had nothing will be with you when you have everything. The ones who abandoned you will try to return, and those who misjudged you will suddenly want a second chance. Allow them, not because you owe them a thing, but because observing people reveal their true selves is one of the most priceless educations you will ever get. Some will be upset that you kept this from them. Let them be upset. You do not owe anyone an inside look at your finances or a justification for your privacy. Some people will expect you to transform, to become arrogant, careless, or privileged. Prove them wrong by remaining exactly the person you are. And then there are those who will completely misjudge you. They will see your quietness and think it is weakness. They will confuse your kindness with a lack of intelligence. They will assume that because you do not flaunt your wealth, you have nothing worth flaunting. These are the ones to watch out for, not because they can harm you financially. You are now secure from that, but because they will challenge your very character, and your response to them will define the kind of person you ultimately become. So, this is my true gift to you. Patience. The strength to endure discomfort without reacting. To let people believe what they wish while you create something they can never take away. To remain silent when the world expects you to scream. Getting even is simple. Any fool with money can ruin someone. But self-control, restraint, the choice to not exercise your power, even when it is available to you, that is something special. That is a real legacy. I love you, my baby girl. I always have, and I always will. You are going to be more than fine, Dad. Maya folded the letter with care and slid it back inside the envelope. She did not weep. She did not get angry. She did not call Marcus to tell him he had just made the worst mistake of his life. She simply sat there, with her hands resting on her belly, feeling her daughter shift beneath her ribs, and came to the conclusion that her father was right. Some fights are not worth your energy because the people who should lose do not need your help to do so. They are perfectly capable of destroying themselves. Victor came back 20 minutes later. He tapped lightly on the door before coming in, allowing her a moment to collect herself. "Do you have any questions?" he asked softly. "Just one," Maya replied. "How much is there?" He took a seat across from her and produced a single piece of paper with a summary she could easily follow. It listed stocks, bonds, real estate properties, private equity, and international funds. The investments were spread across 12 different countries. The assets had been gathered cautiously over 34 years. They were managed discreetly, never with flash, never with recklessness. The total valuation as of the last quarter was $5.2 billion. The figure just sat on the page, a fact that her mind refused to accept. She stared at it, read the number again, and tried to connect it to the man who raised her in a tiny one-bedroom apartment and sent her to school with lunches packed in old grocery bags. "That is impossible," she whispered. "That is a conservative estimate," Victor said. "Your father avoided high-risk ventures. He always chose stability over rapid growth. If he had been more daring, this number could have been substantially larger." She felt a wave of dizziness. "What am I supposed to do with it?" Victor offered a sad but warm smile. "Anything you wish. That is the entire point. You could live on the interest and never spend the original amount. You could give it all to charity tomorrow. You could even act like it does not exist. It belongs to you without any conditions. Does anybody else know about this? Only me, and now you. Your father was very careful about that." She thought of Marcus. She thought about the divorce he was already setting in motion and how he had offered to help support the baby as if he were granting her a huge favor. He was completely unaware, and she had no intention of telling him. "I want to keep this private," she said with resolve. "No one else needs to know." Victor nodded his head. "That is a very wise choice. Whenever you are ready, we can arrange for distributions. Until that time, everything will remain exactly as it is." She got up, shook his hand, and left the bank the same way she had arrived, alone, unsure, and grieving, but fundamentally changed. Because she was now aware of something Marcus was not. The woman he had discarded was not broken. She was fortified, and patience, just as her father had taught her, was the most formidable weapon a person could possess. 3 weeks after that day, the courthouse photos appeared online. Marcus and Isabel, quickly and publicly married, smiling as if they had just won a prize. The comment section exploded almost instantly. "Wow, that was fast. Did his wife not just lose her father? Some people have absolutely no shame." Maya saw the pictures and felt a sharp sting of pain, but she did not reply. She simply carried on with her life. She went to doctor's appointments, prepared the baby's nursery, and read her father's letter again and again until she had committed every single word to memory. Whenever anyone asked how she was coping, Maya offered a gentle smile and gave the same answer every single time. "I am fine." And what was strange is that she truly was. It was not because the betrayal did not sting, but because she had learned a lesson that Marcus never would. True power does not need to perform for an audience. It simply bides its time. Think about it. Real strength remains quiet until it is absolutely necessary. Most people feel the need to broadcast their power the moment they get it, but those who have truly earned it know better. Marcus moved quickly. Their divorce was officially completed in just 43 days. His new marriage took place only 12 days after that. Maya signed every single document without putting up a fight. She requested no alimony. She did not contest the assets they did not really have. She took only what was legally hers, which amounted to almost nothing, and allowed him to leave believing he had handled the whole situation with maturity. He made one public post about it, a very carefully written statement about moving on with grace and choosing his own happiness. The comments poured in, a mix of support and disgust. "Good for you, man. Life is too short. You seriously could not wait 6 months? Her father literally just passed away. This is the exact reason people have lost faith in marriage." Isabel also posted something. It was a picture of her hand, showing off a brand new ring. The caption read, "When you know, you just know." The internet certainly had its opinions, and they were very strong. Maya became the subject of stories people told at dinner parties. The pregnant wife whose husband abandoned her, the woman who never uttered a single word in her own defense, the one everyone was watching, just waiting to see when she would finally crack. Her husband had left her immediately following her father's funeral. The story was sympathetic, tragic, and a little bit pathetic. She heard it all from other people. Friends who were unsure of what to say, acquaintances who sent her awkward text messages, complete strangers on the internet who argued over whether Marcus was a monster or just being honest about his feelings. She never corrected anyone, never defended herself, and never explained that she was fine. In fact, she was better than fine. She just kept her head down and remained patient, because her father had taught her something most people never learn. Public opinion is temporary, but a person's character is permanent. And at that moment, Marcus was showing the entire world exactly who he was. She did not have to say anything at all. By the 7th month of her pregnancy, the public noise had mostly faded. People had moved on to newer scandals, fresher gossip, and someone else's complicated divorce. Maya filled her days by assembling nursery furniture, washing baby clothes, and reading books about childbirth that both terrified and comforted her. Victor called her once a week to check in, making sure she had everything she needed. She always told him yes, even when the real answer was far more complex. She was not having money problems. Victor had set up a small monthly payment that covered her rent, food, and doctor bills without raising suspicion. But she was struggling with her emotions, not because of Marcus, but because of his complete and utter silence. Her father was gone. Her husband was gone. And the one person who might have understood what she was experiencing was a man she would never get to meet. It was the version of her father who had faced the same impossible decision 30 years before. Then, on a Tuesday in late September, something showed up in her mailbox. It was a cream-colored envelope made of heavy paper with her name written in beautiful script and no return address. She opened it with care. Inside, there was an invitation. It read, "You are cordially invited to the inaugural event of the Richardson Hartwell Foundation." Her breath hitched in her throat. She read the words over again. Richardson Hartwell was her father's real name, and by extension, hers as well. The event was set for October 14th. It was a black tie affair at a private location with a limited number of guests. At the very bottom, in smaller print, it said, "Your presence is requested as the Foundation's primary honoree." She had no clue what this was about. Victor had never mentioned a foundation. Her father's letter had not said anything about one either. She took out her phone and dialed Victor's number. He picked up on the second ring. "You received the invitation," he said, more as a statement than a question. "What is all this?" "It is your father's final project. He spent 2 years planning it before he fell ill. I have been putting his plan into action since he passed away. It is time." "Time for what?" Victor paused for a moment before saying gently, "It is time for people to finally understand who you truly are." Her heart began to race. "I did not agree to any of this. You do not have to do anything you are not comfortable with, but the event is definitely happening, and the guest list has already been finalized." "Who is on the list?" There was another pause. "Everyone who matters, and that includes Marcus." The official announcement was released 3 days later. A professional and polished press release was sent to local news outlets and nonprofit groups across the state. The Richardson Hartwell Foundation launches with a $50 million endowment to support education access, workforce development, and single-parent households. The newly formed Richardson Hartwell Foundation will be holding its first ever fundraising gala next month. The foundation was created to honor the legacy of James Richardson, who spent more than 3 decades serving his community in quiet and meaningful ways. The article featured a picture of her father, not in his janitor's uniform, but one from many years ago where he stood in a suit, looking like someone who belonged in a boardroom. People who had known him were confused. "Wait, is that the guy from the elementary school? I had no idea he was wealthy." Who is paying for all of this? The press release did not provide an answer. It identified Victor Kane as the executive director and listed a board of advisors with names that nobody in the area recognized. It also mentioned an anonymous, founding donor whose generous gift had made the entire project possible. The community's reaction was cautious, a mix of curiosity and skepticism. $50 million does not just show up out of nowhere, and James Richardson, the man who mopped floors and fixed leaky pipes, did not seem like the kind of person who would have that sort of money. Rumors began to spread. Some people believed it was a scam. Others thought a celebrity or politician was using her father's name for their own benefit. A few even thought Maya had received a large settlement from Marcus and was using it to fix her public image. Nobody guessed the real story because the truth was simply too bizarre to believe. Maya observed everything from a safe distance. She made no comments, offered no clarifications, and did not get involved in the speculation. Victor was in charge of everything. He handled all press inquiries, event planning, and vendor arrangements. The only thing she had to do was show up, but the guest list weighed heavily on her mind. Victor had sent it to her through an encrypted email. There were 200 names, including donors, community leaders, local politicians, and people her father had worked with over the years. And there, near the bottom of the list, was Marcus Chun, plus a guest. Her stomach churned. "Why is he invited?" she asked Victor on the phone. "Your father specifically requested it." "What?" "He left detailed instructions, including the exact names. Marcus was one of them." "That makes no sense. Dad passed away before Marcus even filed for divorce." "Your father was very perceptive," Victor said, choosing his words with care. "He had a way of seeing things before they happened." She let that sink in, trying to understand it. Her father had known, maybe not the specifics, but he knew it was a possibility, and he had made certain that Marcus would be present on the night everything was revealed. It was not for revenge, but for the purpose of education. "I do not know if I can do this," Maya confessed. "You do not have to," Victor assured her. "But if you do not go, you will spend the rest of your life wondering what might have been." She thought about her father's letter, about being patient, and about letting people show their true colors. "He will bring Isabel," she said in a quiet voice. "Probably. And people will talk. They are already talking." She let out a long breath and felt the baby move inside her as she placed a hand on her stomach. "Okay," she said at last. "I will be there." "Good," Victor responded, "because this event is not about him. It is about you, and it is time for people to understand that distinction." The venue was absolutely breathtaking. It was an old estate that had been transformed into an event center. Chandeliers that resembled frozen waterfalls hung from the ceiling. The floors were so polished, they perfectly mirrored the view above. The tables were covered with linens that likely cost more than most people's monthly rent. Maya got there 30 minutes before the event was scheduled to begin. Victor met her at a private side entrance. He looked at her once and smiled. "You look absolutely perfect," he said. She had picked her outfit very carefully. It was an emerald green dress with an empire waist to accommodate her very prominent pregnancy. Her hair was pulled back in a simple style. She wore very little jewelry, except for one special piece. A diamond necklace that had been stored in the safety deposit box. It was vintage, elegant, and understated, unless you knew what you were looking at. She did not know how much it was worth. She only knew that it had belonged to her grandmother, the woman her father's family had completely cut out of their lives, along with him. Wearing it felt right. "How are you feeling?" Victor asked. "I am terrified," she admitted. "Good. That means you are paying attention." The guests began to arrive. Maya watched from a private room that had a one-way window overlooking the main ballroom. She saw familiar faces, people from her father's church, his former colleagues, and neighbors who had known him for many years. And then she saw Marcus. He entered with Isabel on his arm. Isabel wore a bold, confident red dress. She was the kind of woman who entered a room and expected to be noticed. Marcus, on the other hand, looked uneasy, not because of the fancy event, but because he had no idea why he was even there. He looked around the room, searching for Maya, but he probably did not see her. Isabel led him over to the bar. They got drinks and smiled at people they did not know, playing the role of a happy, successful couple. Maya could feel her own pulse throbbing in her throat. Victor suddenly appeared next to her. You do not have to go out there just yet. We can wait until the program has started. No, Maya said softly. I want to walk in just like everybody else. Are you sure? She nodded her head because her father had taught her a very important lesson. Confidence is not about feeling ready. It is about moving forward even when you are not. She left the private room, walked down a long hallway, and paused at the entrance to the main hall. She took a deep breath, and then she stepped through the doors. The room did not become silent all at once, but the entire atmosphere shifted. The chatter in the room just died out. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Every head turned, not because she made some grand entrance, but because she was very clearly pregnant and walking in by herself. She could see the recognition spread through the crowd like a ripple in a pond. Marcus saw her. His expression went completely blank, then shifted to confusion, and finally to something that looked a lot like panic. Isabel leaned over and whispered something to him. He did not answer. He just kept staring. Maya did not even look his way. She moved with a calm purpose to a reserved seat near the front, sat down with care, and placed her hands in her lap. Just breathe. A woman she did not know came up to her. She had a kind, older face. You must be Maya, she said softly. I am. Your father spoke about you all the time. I am so sorry for your loss. Thank you. The woman offered a warm smile. He would be so proud of you tonight. A lump formed in Maya's throat. She could only manage a small nod. More people came to her, offering their condolences and sharing kind memories of her father. And all the while, from across the room, Marcus was frozen in his seat because a thought was starting to form in his mind. This was not just some random event. This was her event, and he had absolutely no clue what was about to happen. The lights in the room began to dim. A microphone was set up in the center of the small stage. Victor was the first to walk up. Good evening, he started. Thank you all for coming. Tonight is not just about launching a foundation. It is about honoring a man who lived by his values every single day, especially when nobody was looking. He spoke about her father, his dedication, his quiet kindness, and his reliability. People throughout the room nodded in agreement. A few gently wiped their eyes. Then Victor's tone changed. What most of you do not know is that James Richardson made a very difficult choice 34 years ago. He walked away from a life of incredible wealth and privilege because he refused to give up on love. He changed his name, started from scratch, and built a new life that was based on his character, not on his inheritance. Confused whispers started to spread through the audience. Marcus leaned forward a little, now listening intently. That decision cost him everything his family thought was important, Victor went on, but it gave him something much more valuable, his integrity and a daughter who inherited his principles instead of his fortune. Victor paused, letting his words sink in. The Richardson Hartwell Foundation exists because James never forgot where he came from, and because he spent 30 years ensuring his daughter would have the means to build something important without the weight of expectations or a sense of entitlement. He gestured toward Maya. It is my honor to introduce the Foundation's founder and its primary benefactor, Maya Richardson. The room filled with applause, which started politely and then grew much louder. Maya stood up slowly and walked to the stage, each step feeling heavy and deliberate. She watched Marcus's face change as he processed the new information. His confusion turned into understanding. That understanding turned into pure horror. He was finally connecting all the pieces. Richardson Hartwell was her father's real name. The $50 million endowment, the foundation, it was all her. Isabella looked over at him, baffled by his reaction. He did not offer an explanation. He just sat there, watching the woman he had left, the woman who was 6 months pregnant, grieving, and who he thought was broken, was now standing on a stage in front of 200 people who finally understood what he never had. She was not a victim. She was a legacy. Maya got to the microphone and adjusted it just a little. The entire room fell completely silent. She did not look at Marcus. She looked out at the people who had loved her father, the ones who came tonight because they remembered his goodness. And then she started to speak. Her voice was steady, not booming or dramatic, just perfectly clear. My father taught me that the most important decisions we ever make are the ones that nobody else sees. She paused for a moment. He taught me that love is not about what is convenient. It is about being there for people, especially when it is difficult, especially when no one is watching, and especially when you have every excuse to just walk away. A few people nodded their heads. He also taught me that wealth without character is nothing more than noise, that real power is not about what you own. It is about what you choose to do with it when no one is making you do anything at all. She glanced down at her notes and took a deep breath. Most of you knew my father as a janitor, a maintenance man, someone who always showed up early, stayed late, and never once asked for any credit. She looked back up at the crowd. What you did not know is that he was born into one of the wealthiest families on the East Coast. He was supposed to inherit an entire empire, but he gave it all up because the people who control that wealth told him that love was not worth it. There were audible gasps and whispers. He proved them wrong. Her voice remained strong. He spent 34 years of his life as living proof that a good life is not measured by your assets. It is measured by your integrity. And when he passed away, he left me something much more valuable than money. She stopped for a moment. He left me a choice. The room was absolutely still. I could have kept all of this a secret. I could have taken what he built for me and just disappeared. Nobody would have ever known. Nobody would have even cared. She looked straight at the audience now, but my father did not hide his wealth because he was ashamed of it. He hid it because he wanted me to grow up knowing who I was long before I knew what I had. She let that idea hang in the air, and now that I know both, I am choosing to do what he would have done. I am going to build something that matters. I will help people who have been overlooked. I will support families that do not have a safety net. Victor came forward and placed a document on the podium next to her. The Richardson Hartwell Foundation has been established with an initial gift of $50 million, and it has a long-term structure designed to grow that into a source of sustained generational impact. Applause began to build, but she was not done. That $50 million represents less than 1% of the total trust my father set up in my name. The clapping stopped abruptly. People looked around at each other, trying to calculate the numbers in their heads. The full valuation, as of the last quarter, is $5.2 billion. There was complete silence, but it was not the silence of shock. It was the silence of a deep realization. She did not smile or seem triumphant. She just stated it as a fact. I am telling you all this not to impress you, but to make one thing perfectly clear. My father did not raise me to be rich. He raised me to be responsible, and that is exactly what I plan to be. She stepped away from the microphone. The applause that came next was not just polite. It was a roar. People got to their feet, clapping, and some were even crying. Maya walked off the stage with composure, went back to her seat, and across the room, Marcus just sat there, completely still. His face had turned a pale shade. His hands were gripping the edge of his table. Isabel was trying to say something to him. He was not listening. He was doing the math in his head. The woman he had left, thinking she had absolutely nothing, had just revealed that she controlled more wealth than he could ever imagine in 10 lifetimes. And he had walked away from it all, not because she was not enough for him, but because he had never even bothered to ask who she really was. If you have ever underestimated someone just because they were quiet, this is your moment to sit with that uncomfortable feeling. Subscribe if you believe that loyalty and character still have value, because this story is not over yet. Marcus tried to make a quick exit. The second Maya left the stage, he stood up, grabbed Isabel's hand, and mumbled something about needing some fresh air. But Victor was quicker. He did not block his path. He just stood near the exit with a calm smile, a calm, knowing look that said everything he needed to say without a single word. Marcus froze. Isabel looked confused. What is wrong? He did not answer her. He could not. Because what could he possibly say? That the woman he divorced only 8 weeks ago, the one he abandoned while she was pregnant and grieving, had just revealed herself to be one of the richest people in the state. That he had walked away from billions of dollars because he could not be bothered to stick around through a hard time. That every single choice he had made for the past 6 months had been based on a completely wrong idea about who actually held the power. Isabel pulled on his arm. Marcus, talk to me. He sat back down like a robot, feeling completely numb. All around them, people were celebrating, talking with excitement about the foundation, about Maya's incredible poise, and about her father's amazing story. Someone nearby said, "Can you imagine walking away from that much money just to marry the person you loved? That is so rare." Another person added, "And to raise a daughter who turned out to be so grounded, that is even rarer." Marcus heard every single word. Each one was a sharp reminder of the man he had failed to be. He glanced over toward Maya. She was surrounded by people now, thanking her, hugging her, and offering their support. She looked exhausted, but her resolve was firm. She did not look in his direction even once, not because she was being spiteful, but because he was simply no longer important. Isabel finally put it all together. "Wait," she said slowly. "That is your ex-wife." He just nodded. "The one you said had nothing." He did not say a word. She pulled her hand away from him slightly, staring. "Marcus, how much of this did you know?" "Nothing," he said in a quiet voice. "I knew nothing. You did not ask." He looked at her and saw her expression changing, right before his eyes. He could see her recalculating everything. She was not angry. She was evaluating him, wondering if she had made a terrible mistake by tying her future to someone who could misjudge a situation so badly. He saw it, he felt it, and he realized this must have been what Maya felt. Watching someone you trusted completely reevaluate your worth based on new information. It was deeply humiliating. "I need to talk to her," he said all of a sudden. "Do not," Isabel warned him. "I have to, Marcus. Just leave it alone." But he was already on his feet, making his way toward Maya. Victor intercepted him smoothly, his manner polite but unyielding. "She is not available right now." "I just need 5 minutes." "She is not interested." Marcus's jaw clenched. "You cannot speak for her." "I do not have to." "She asked me to make sure that you understood. There's nothing left to discuss." The words felt like a heavy door slamming shut. It was final, permanent. Marcus just stood there, useless, while the woman he had so badly underestimated continued her conversations with people who were actually important to her. He had wanted some kind of closure, an explanation, maybe even forgiveness. But Maya did not owe him any of those things, and she was not going to give them. 10 minutes later, she left quietly through a side exit. There was no big farewell. She was just gone. Marcus watched her leave and understood, for the first time in his entire life, what it felt like to be completely and utterly irrelevant. Naomi, Grace Richardson, arrived on a Thursday. She weighed 7 pounds and 4 ounces, had a full head of dark hair, and looked at the world through her grandfather's eyes. Maya cradled her for the first time in a hospital room that felt perfectly silent. There was no husband pacing the halls, no extended family in the waiting room. There was only Victor, who had insisted on being there, and a kind nurse named Petra. Petra stayed long after her shift ended, believing that no one should welcome a child into the world all alone. "She is absolutely perfect," Petra whispered. Maya could only nod as tears streamed down her face. Her father should have been there to hold his granddaughter and see the beautiful life he had fought so hard to protect. The baby's weight in her arms felt like a promise fulfilled, a future secured by a man who would never get to see it. Maya gazed down at Naomi's face, a flawless little canvas of pure potential. "My sweet girl, I will always protect you," she murmured. But her father was gone, and Maya knew she had to be enough for both of them. She studied Naomi's features, tracing the lines of her tiny fingers and memorizing every detail. "Your grandfather loved you long before you were even here," she whispered to the baby. "He made sure you would have a life that was safe, secure, and full of freedom." Naomi let out a tiny yawn, a creature impossibly small yet completely whole. Victor moved closer, his expression full of grandfatherly warmth as he looked at the newborn. "James would have been bursting with pride," he said gently. "You did a good thing, Maya." She let out a long, slow breath. "I feel like all I did was survive." He smiled. "That is more than most people can say." She spent 2 more days in the hospital, learning the rhythms of nursing, the mechanics of changing diapers, and how to operate on just 2 hours of sleep. A bouquet of flowers arrived from Marcus. They were generic, accompanied by a card with a simple message: "Congratulations. Wishing you both well." She tossed them in the trash without a second thought. It was not an act of anger, but a simple recognition that they were meaningless. They were an empty gesture from a man who had already made his choice to be distant. Around that same time, Isabel shared a new photo on social media. It showed her and Marcus at a sunny brunch, both smiling brightly. The caption read, "Choosing joy every day." Maya did not even bother to read the comments. Her focus was on more important things. When she finally brought Naomi home, the apartment felt transformed. The space seemed smaller and quieter, yet it was filled with a new kind of presence it never had before. She placed the bassinet right next to her bed. Above it she hung the mobile her father had purchased months before his illness took over. He had carved the wooden animals himself during long, sleepless nights. She discovered them in his apartment after he passed away, wrapped with care and attached to a small note that read, "For when she arrives." Now, those same little animals spun gently above his granddaughter, casting soft, dancing shadows on the wall. Maya settled into the rocking chair and held Naomi tight. She started to sing a lullaby her father used to sing to her as a child when she could not sleep. And for the first time since his death, a feeling that resembled peace washed over her. The grief had not vanished, but she was finally starting to grasp the lesson he had been trying to teach her all along. Legacy is not about the things you leave behind for people. It is about the people you raise to carry on. The foundation grew at a pace that surprised everyone. In just 6 months, it had already funded scholarships for 40 students. They opened a new center for workforce training and established partnerships with 3 local nonprofits. These groups provided emergency aid to single parents who were facing eviction or drowning in medical debt. Maya managed it all without any fanfare. There were no press tours, no grand ribbon-cutting events, and she only gave speeches when it was absolutely necessary. She simply showed up, oop, made the important decisions, signed the checks that changed people's lives, and then went home to her daughter. People began to recognize her on the street, not as some kind of celebrity, but as a person who was making a real difference. A woman in her late 30s approached her in a grocery store one day, her eyes filled with tears. "You paid for my son's tuition," she said, her voice trembling. "I am not sure if you remember him, but he is the first person in our entire family to ever attend college. It is all because of you." Maya offered her a gentle smile. "It is because of your son. He is the one who earned it." "No," the woman insisted, shaking her head. "It is because someone believed he was worth the investment. Thank you so much." Moments like that became more and more frequent. She received letters, emails, and had chance meetings with people whose lives were completely changed because the foundation was there to help. Maya saved every single letter. She would read them on difficult days, whenever she started to doubt if any of her work truly mattered. It did matter. It was not about the money itself, but about what that money made possible. Her father had been right all along. Wealth without a clear purpose is nothing more than empty noise. But wealth that is used with intention, that is how you build a legacy. By the time Naomi celebrated her first birthday, the foundation had expanded its reach into 3 different counties. Victor was in charge of operations, while Maya guided the overall vision. After a while, people stopped asking about where all the money was coming from. They were just grateful that it was always there when it was needed. Marcus would hear about Maya's work from time to time through mutual friends, on social media, or when her name would quietly pop up in circles that made him feel uneasy. He tried to make a donation once, sending a check for $5,000. He mailed it straight to the foundation's main office. Victor sent it right back to him. There was no letter of explanation, just the uncashed check and a single word written on a note. Declined. Marcus never tried to donate again. Isabel ended up leaving him just 14 months after the gala. Her departure was not dramatic. It was practical. She had finally understood what Maya had known from the very beginning. Marcus was the type of man who would trade up the moment he thought he found something better, and then trade down as soon as he realized he had made a mistake. She had no interest in being the next person he completely underestimated. Their divorce was finalized quickly and quietly. Hardly anyone even took notice, because by that point, Marcus had become exactly what Maya had predicted he would be: irrelevant. She had not destroyed him. She had simply built a new life without him. In doing so, she had turned him into a mere footnote in a story that was never really about him in the first place. Marcus saw Naomi only once, and it was completely by accident. He was taking a walk through a park near his office when he noticed them. Maya was pushing a stroller, and Naomi, who was probably around 18 months old, was pointing at the birds and chattering with excitement. Maya looked different. She seemed stronger and more at ease with herself in a way she never had been when they were married. For a moment, he considered walking over to them to say something, but then he saw that Victor was there as well. Victor was walking right beside them, laughing at something Naomi had just said. He was present in a way that Marcus had never been, so he stayed back and watched them from a distance. Naomi had her mother's smile and her grandfather's eyes. She looked healthy, happy, and deeply loved. A strange feeling twisted inside Marcus's chest. It was not quite jealousy. It was a sense of recognition. He realized he had been given the chance to be a part of that life. He could have been the man pushing that stroller, the one listening to his daughter's laughter. He could have built something meaningful, but he had chosen a different path. It was not because Maya was not enough for him, but because he had convinced himself that she was too much effort. He had wanted a life that was easy, convenient, and uncomplicated. What he ended up with was a life that was empty. Isabel was gone. His professional reputation had taken a series of quiet blows. He did not realize the full extent of the damage until people simply stopped returning his calls. The life he thought he was upgrading to felt more hollow with each passing year. In that same time, Maya had built something that was undeniable. She did not do it loudly or with any sense of revenge, but with quiet, steady determination. The foundation continued to grow. Her name started appearing in contexts that truly mattered, like on education panels, nonprofit boards, and community planning committees. She never chased after recognition, but it found her anyway, because people will always respect competence. And she had proven her competence time and time again. Marcus, in stark contrast, had completely stalled. His career had hit a plateau. All of his relationships remained on the surface. His life felt more like a performance he was putting on rather than something he was actually living. Sometimes he thought about reaching out to her, maybe sending an apology or trying to explain himself. But what could he possibly say? I am sorry I left you when things became difficult. I am sorry I was unable to see your true value. I am sorry I was too arrogant to even ask questions. None of it would change a single thing. Maya had moved on from him completely and permanently. He was left alone with a painful lesson that had come far too late to be of any use. Years went by. Naomi started kindergarten. The foundation celebrated its 5th anniversary. Maya's name finally appeared in a business journal. The profile was titled, "The Philanthropist You Have Never Heard of." The article spoke about her father, the foundation, and all the incredible work it was doing. It mentioned Marcus only once, just in passing. It said, Richardson was previously married, but has been a single mother since her daughter's birth, choosing to focus on family and philanthropy rather than public relationships. It was just one sentence, reducing him to a minor detail. He read it twice and felt a sharp sting. It was not because the words were cruel, but because they were completely accurate. He had been demoted to a detail, a brief phase in her life. He was just a person who had been there for a short time and then left before anything truly important happened. And the most painful part of it all was that he knew he deserved it. Maya stood in her father's old apartment one last time before the lease officially ended. 6 years had passed since his death. 6 years of building, of growing, and of learning who she was when there was no one else around to tell her. Naomi was spending the afternoon with Victor, which gave Maya the space she needed to close this final chapter by herself. She walked through the rooms, which now seemed smaller than she remembered. She ran her hand along the kitchen counter, where her father had cooked thousands of meals. She sat on the couch where he had slept for 16 years just so she could have the bedroom. The apartment was now completely empty. The furniture had been donated, and his belongings had been sorted through. All that was left were the memories, and one last envelope she had been saving. It was the one Victor had kept for her until he knew she was ready. She opened it with care. Baby girl, if you are reading this, it means that enough time has gone by for you to finally understand what I need to tell you. Loss is not a punishment. Loss is permission. It is permission to find out who you are when there is no one left to place their expectations on you. It is permission to build something that reflects your own values instead of seeking someone else's approval. It is permission to walk away from anyone who is unable to see your worth, not because you are filled with anger, but because you are far too busy building something better. Over these years, you have proven something that I have known all along. Character is not about what you have in your possession. It is about what you choose to do when you have everything to lose. Some people will tell you that you got lucky, that you inherited wealth, privilege, and opportunity. Let them talk, because what they will never understand is that wealth without wisdom is just a pile of money. And you, my dear, had wisdom long before you had any resources. I am so proud of you, not because you are successful, but because you have always been kind, you have stayed grounded, and you have always been yourself. That is your real inheritance. All my love, Dad. She carefully folded the letter, slipped it back into its envelope, and wiped the tears from her eyes. Then she locked the door to the apartment one last time and walked out into the bright afternoon sun. Her daughter, Naomi, was waiting for her at Victor's office, and she ran toward her the second she walked in. Mama. Maya scooped her daughter into her arms, holding her tight. Did you have a good time? We got ice cream. Of course you did, Maya said, smiling over at Victor. He just shrugged with a playful grin. Grandpa privileges, he said. The three of them walked to the car together, with Naomi excitedly chattering about her day and Victor asking silly questions that made her giggle. As Maya buckled her daughter into the car seat, she looked at this tiny person who would never get to meet her grandfather. But Maya knew she would grow up surrounded by his values. And in that moment, she felt something she had not felt in a very long time. She felt a deep sense of gratitude, not for the things she had been given, but for the person she was now free to become. It was because her father had been right all along. Losing him was not the end. It was the beginning. It was permission to finally choose the person she wanted to be. No apologies, no compromises, and no need for anyone else's approval. And she knew she had chosen well. If this story made you reflect on loyalty, patience, or responsibility, subscribing means you are choosing stories that make you better, not just entertain you. Do not just watch. Learn with us. Hey everyone, thank you so much for sticking with us until the very end. We truly appreciate your support. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment for us down below. We always love to hear what you think. And here's some good news. The experience does not have to end here. Just click on the video that is right here on your screen to jump into another incredible story. Trust us, you will not want to miss it. Thanks again for being such a wonderful part of our community. Until we see you next time, stay curious and continue to explore the stories that truly touch your heart. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.